Hi, everyone. I'm Daisy McGowan. I'm the director of GOCA, the UCCS Galleries of Contemporary Art, and this is our virtual studio visit series. We're very fortunate to include Cymon Padilla in this, and thanks, Cymon, for saying yes to my invitation to Zoom along with us on a voyage to your studio, which I have had the privilege of seeing in person. You were part of the Great Expectations survey exhibition that we did this past January, February, March. Seems like eons ago, but it's just a couple months ago. We wrapped that show up at the GOCA downtown Colorado Springs location, and you had, I think, two of the, you really anchor that show with your paintings, some outstanding work. But one really special thing that I get to experience, and we luckily brought some folks along last time we visited your studio, was getting to see your process. And so we'll focus on that today. But I just want to say, this is intended to offer to artists in our art world and our art community in Colorado and across the Rocky Mountain West a chance to share out what they're doing during this time of quarantine. And then we're bringing funding as well to artists, some modest funding. That's very important. And we had some funding from Colorado Creative Industries as sponsors for this series. So we're thankful for that, to be able to get that to artists. But then also for me, it's really a favorite part of my job is a studio visit. I do about 200 a year, or try to, as contemporary art curator. That's sort of the pace you've got to keep up with. So it's been wonderful to follow your work for the last years. You've had a lot of success going on with exhibitions out of the area, but also you show pretty regularly here in Colorado Springs and are a big part of the local art scene here. So anyways, I'm just looking forward to turning it over and talking with you. Do you want to share a little bit with everybody about your background and then also where you're at and what your current working situation is?
Sure. Hi, my name is Cymon Padilla. I was born and raised here in Colorado Springs. I've been, I guess I got my associate degree in 2012 from Pikes Peak Community College. Just kind of learned the basics of painting, drawing, printmaking, etc. And since then, I was lucky enough to have my first solo show at the Modbo here in the Springs. And since then, since 2013, have just sort of worked trying to figure out what I'm supposed to paint, learning the sort of technical aspects of oil painting through showing. So each show is just sort of a learning process for me. That's kind of been the process ever since. The last show I showed at was Great Expectations at GOCA. It was an amazing show. I had my walls where I had my two paintings on, and they were the biggest paintings I've ever worked on. It was exciting to sort of experience that and to sort of work big and know the challenges of that. But then, like, on the other side, there was this virtual reality installment, which was amazing. The whole show was incredible, and I feel really honored to have been a part of that. Right now I'm working on a show for the Modbo in September, and just have some basic ideas sketched out and canvases built, kind of ready to go. So
That's such a great space for a solo show. The scale, it's about, how many square feet is that? About, or how many running feet is that space?
Oh geez, I usually just look at the wall space and see how many paintings I can fit on it. So
How many paintings are you looking at?
like with the new layout, I'd say like maybe eight. Let's say eight, because these are relatively large canvases. But
that's a lot of work. I know the paintings are intensive, and and it sounds to me like you're embarking on sort of a new series. Do you tend to work that way, show by show, and sort of embrace that problem solving and encapsulate it in that? So you have like a cohesive body of work that you're showing in that exhibition.
sort of. For me, the process is pretty fluid. Over the years, I've learned that I need to have a deadline in order to actually paint. I can't just walk into the studio and say, like, I'm gonna make a painting today. I need to have a gallery or some sort of set deadline or goal for a body of work. So Brett reached out to me a couple months ago. I've shown at the Modbo maybe 5 or 6 times over the last years. So just kind of starting that process. I've got about 4 months, less than 4 months. So the deadline.
like Brett Anderson when I reached out to you.
Yeah.
Because now the Alley Arts District, as they call it, in downtown Colorado Springs, SPQR is run by Lauren,
Hmm.
uh, and Lauren and Brett started that together. They're no longer a couple, but they are still running those sort of side by side. So, but Brett has been also planning shows there. It sounds like so. That's
Yeah, and that gallery was kind of that was my first solo show, and I've kind of felt it as sort of an incubator for
mm,
local artists, up and coming artists, people just sort of getting the layout of what it means to be a painter and also to show your work to an audience. So it's
yeah,
been a great
that's a great way to think about it. It really is an incubator, and they've been very supportive. And you've gone on and had shows outside the area. You had a show at Leon Gallery that was so well received and critically received. And wasn't surprised by that. It was tremendous body of work. I've just been so impressed with your work over the years. So I'm excited to hear what you're working on now.
Me too. um, right now, I just have some like very basic images. The way that I do a show, I don't really sketch anything out or write anything out or even put ideas out in like a cohesive unit. It's sort of an organic process. I'll just maybe start with some basic ideas, find some images. I would usually call those like foundational images to sort of set the stage for what else comes into a painting. So uh, for what I'm working on right now, I've found this great painting by Peter Paul Rubens, and I'll try and share it with you. I'm still getting used to Zoom. And the painting itself is called The Tiger Hunt. Um,
Oh yeah, there we
yeah, you can see it, okay. And it's a detail of a very, very large painting, but for this show, I've just sort of been thinking about our relationship to nature, mortality, the unpredictability of life on planet Earth. I think that we've all sort of been experiencing a little bit of that the last couple of months.
go.
So those are just kind of the seeds that I'm working from right now.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see that. Your process is so interesting. You've really, um, I think that your work always surprises me, and you tend to shift into new directions. The work you had in the Great Expectations show, for example, you did have one painting that had a Caravaggio reference, and so you tended to reference the old masters, and you have a technique of painting in their style, but then
Mm-hmm.
you blend it with these pop culture references, and so I can understand how your process might be very image driven. Where are you finding the images? Are you sort of looking online, or just like looking at books, or where are you?
It's a little bit of both. Usually, I'll just have. I was thinking about tigers the last couple months for some reason. Maybe it has something to do with tiger king. I don't know why. That's weird. Where did that come from?
I liked your metaphor for our place in nature, and it almost that image you shared almost felt like a smackdown. Like, remember, you're an animal. You're part of nature. You're not about.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. That's where a lot of that's coming from. It's just sort of our tenuous existence on planet Earth, and just not kind of like going through our daily lives blindly, not realizing that we're all still connected. We've got this global pandemic that's sweeping through the world right now, and that's a part of our relationship to nature. So those are sort of like the basic ideas I'm working with right now. Just at this point in the process, it's very early, and I could switch directions very easily. It's just kind of like getting all this garbage in my head out onto a canvas and playing with it. So
Well, I especially appreciate your sharing this out on video. The studio visit's usually a pretty private affair. I did bring a big group of people over, so there was.
yeah,
And you are in your home. You're working in your home studio, right?
yeah.
Um, and so that probably not much has changed for you actually with the social
No,
distancing.
no. I still have my full time job at a grocery store, and I do pretty well under isolation. So this nothing's really changed except for I don't go out and have a beer with my friends. So that's about it.
Yeah. And so as far as the process, anyways, I was just saying thanks for sharing that with us because
Yeah.
sounds like you are comfortable sort of staying in a place of not totally knowing. You're not, have a plan that you work towards and then sort of execute it. You're really, um, you do have a process. Obviously, you were sharing that you're sketching out your underdrawing,
Mhm.
um, but that as far as the body of work goes, you allow some space for evolution, natural or organic development, I guess is the way to say it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's really important for me, to sort of keep it pretty loose, as I go through. Like a single piece can change pretty radically over, like the 3 or 4 weeks that I'll be working on it. And it just allows for just total freedom. I can just, let if I was taking my dog on a walk a couple of years ago before the show at Mabo and then Leon, and was working on this piece based on a painting from Ang. I can't remember his whole name right now, but Ang. And my dog and I, we passed a yard with some pink flamingos in it. I was like, a pink flamingo, that just like feels perfect. So that's in the painting now. Like as I go through my daily life, something that jumps out or sticks with me will end up in a painting.
That's a great example. You're really basically saying that you spend your daily life observing and really um, noticing the world around you, and you're processing and problem solving all that time, and as things feel right sort of intuitively, you pull them in. uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, that makes sense. You're sort of sifting through the culture of your everyday
Yeah,
experience out in
yeah,
the world,
and it's
online, wherever.
my work's not really like personal per se, but it is in a way. I mean, I guess every artist's work is personal, but I like to just keep it sort of loose, and I try not to edit. If something feels like it fits, and I'm not going to question that. And maybe like months later, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's why that porcelain figurine fits into the larger composition because of A, B, or C. So it's kind of fun to surprise yourself too.
Yeah, I think sometimes uh, in my, I'm lucky to have a background as a visual artist and have trained in that field. And because when I work with artists and I work with people that don't have that background, they often can't understand how fraught it is for an artist to put art out in the world. And I try to explain, you're so close to it when you've just created something. You need some time on it. And of course, putting it into a gallery or museum space like really changes the um, experience of it in some ways, and can really give it a nice neutral plane to understand it. But you might even need months or years to understand how all your work fits together.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, when I dropped my work off for the Great Expectations show, I like you understood exactly what I was going through, like mentally. You just said, I think that we were looking at it on the wall, and you said like, you're still inside of these, aren't you? Like you need to like have some space. And I told like, you get it, and that meant a lot to me.
Yeah, I feel that I feel lucky to be able to understand that, and I think it's particular to every creative person putting something out in the world. When I put writing out in the world, it's terrifying.
Absolutely.
I always have my mom edit my work first. She's sort of a ruthless editor who's sort of also like not, she's, pretty supportive, but she'll tell me what's up. But, for visual artists, sometimes you have people that you can find that can give you that support, but a lot of times you're really alone in that space with the work and you're so deep in it. It sometimes, can be almost too vulnerable to have somebody come in and talk to you about the work unless you really trust them.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a very vulnerable position, and it's not really gotten super better with time. I thought that like as I go through this like my arts career, it's going to get a lot easier. But there's always this part of me that's like, oh my god, I'm naked. It's really tough. But
But I honestly think that's when the work is the best. It's like the most powerful. And I'm not saying that there's this like trope of artists suffering for their work, but there's just an element of vulnerability when you feel that in that space and that have that fear. It's like this high wire act. It's also thrilling, um, and you can see how people that are really creative could go into different methods of managing that anxiety. Um, and a lot of tropes about artists. I don't think artists need to suffer, but I do think it's good to have an understanding of what that can feel like.
yeah,
Um, give some respect for people when you're really putting yourself out there. which you do. I really see you do that.
Yeah, the high wire rack. That's a good metaphor. And it is thrilling to work alone in the studio for months on end, and then just like there's this one day, it's like bam, it's out on the wall. It's nerve wracking, but it's really exciting too to let people see what you've been up to, for this time. So
Yeah, and you sort of let go of you know, most artists I know are really happy to have other people's reactions and interpretations, and it's fascinating, because like you said, you're in your head, and somebody else brings their experience to it. Not saying every comment is gold or something.
well, I love critical feedback.
That's the operative phrase, critical feedback.
Yeah, I found it pretty rare that someone will actually like say like, I don't like this, or like at least an element of it. The few times that I've had someone say like, I don't really get the Disney characters, or like whatever. I was like, thank you, like thanks for at least like
Being
being,
honest.
and it feels really nice and refreshing when someone like sort of like kindly tells you like, I don't get it, but it's fine.
Well, and it's a great point of departure for discussion. I personally really like those kinds of discussions, as long as people aren't too intoxicated when they're in the gallery having that discussion. They tend to be really some of the richest ones. We had a minimalist show. It was frankly very hard for a lot of folks, and I had a artist from the community talk to me about it. He said, I just have such a hard time with this. And so we said, well, let's live in that space of discomfort. Like, what is that about? Your work is loaded with so much narrative, and it's like each piece is like an art history lesson. And I mean that as far as referencing classical painting, the canon, and also referencing contemporary culture and pop culture and visual imagery. And I think for a lot of the responses we had with your work were just totally enthralled and interested in wanting to tell the story they came up with, because you do leave this you leave an openness in your work. It's not completely closed, like a Caravaggio painting would actually have a pretty closed loop narrative, and you might spend time looking at the way they painted the flesh or the drapery, or like the technique, but it's a biblical story or a historical story retelling. You're doing this mashup in a way where you're sort of putting things together and saying, all right, now you tell the story that you're getting out of it in a way. Is that sort of what it feels like when you talk with people about your
Yeah,
work?
I'm to go back a little bit. That ambiguity is a really important part of the process for me. I don't like didactic art, or art that like tells you what to think or what this piece is about. The ambiguity for any piece, like any of the art that I gravitate towards to contemporary art, it has to have that ambiguity so that you can like fill the space with your own thoughts, and like make your own connections. When I'm like adding different elements to a piece, I think of it as sort of just like a constellation of meaning for me, even though I haven't really like articulated it for myself. It's just like, this fits here. These have an interrelationship in some way. And it's really important for me to keep that ambiguous so that, again, like the audience can go in and sort of fill in the gaps for themselves and make their own interpretations. And I love hearing people's different angles on the pieces.
Do you mind
So,
sharing
yeah.
that you had in the recent GOCA?
I'm trying to think if there's like any like concrete examples.
Oh no,
I,
I was asking if you
I
could
don't
pull
have.
an image from the recent show, so we could take a look at the visual of it.
Sure. Yeah. Here's the.
I think we're talking about it in the abstract, but for folks who haven't seen.
Right, absolutely. This is the Caravaggio. You can see it, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think this one is called Terrain. And oh boy, I'm getting like I'm looking at this again and just like trying to get back into that place. What does it mean? So I started with the Caravaggio painting. It's sort of stretched across the canvas. I did that digitally, and then went in and painted it using the classical techniques that I've been working on for the past couple of years. And this, I mean, it's a perfect example of that. I didn't know what the dogs, the porcelain like figurines, had to do with the narrative itself, but they just needed to be in there. Um, and they feel like they're sort of a part of the action. There's maybe some judgment or some like they all have like different like facial expressions.
Mhm.
And Go ahead.
Oh yeah, it's just fascinating. Like on their own, they would be just, these figurines that you kind of, oh, you just overlook it. But mashed up with the painting, the Caravaggio that has such an intense narrative going on, they just become completely transformed. It's fascinating to think about that.
Yeah. Looking at it now, it's been like what 4 months since that show. I think I still need some time to figure out what's going on here.
Not asking you to tell us
Yeah,
exactly.
no, I know, and that's actually I wouldn't tell. If I did know, I wouldn't tell you.
Yeah.
Secret.
Can you go back a little bit and talk about how have you worked on those old master painting techniques? Where did you start with that, and
Where to start? I mean, in school, I learned a little bit about the Griselle method. It's where and a lot of the old masters use that technique to get some really like um, different layers of like skin tones or just like whatever you're painting. It has like all these different layers that you can like kind of see but can't really like through the layers of transparent um, glazes on the canvas. But you start with a tonal painting, which is essentially just like a black and white painting of whatever you're going to be working on. And then you go in once that dries with some semi-transparent layers of oil glaze, and then you can work through that, and it really creates this really lovely depth on the surface of the painting. And when I take a painting and sort of like manipulate it digitally, it kind of feels like breaking it. Like this especially goes back to the series that I was doing on Aang,
Mhm.
and I would take one of his figures and sort of like mix it up and distort it, and then go back in and like use sort of similar techniques that he used, sort of like rebuild it and like create that figure again. That's just how it felt on the inside for me in the process.
That's so interesting that you're talking about sort of breaking it or distorting it and then building it. It sounds very sculptural, almost the way you talk.
That's kind of how it felt. Yeah, a little bit.
And I don't know if you have any examples of those from that series, but you're putting them into sort of Photoshop and using this, these different distorting techniques. One where you sort of twisted the image, and then it sounds like you're outputting that to a drawing.
Yeah, I'll project it onto a canvas, and here, let me try and find that. So this is one of the first ones I did on that series. It's one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, it's a great example.
Yeah, I don't have the original painting, but it's just a figure sitting in his chair, and I just sort of like warped it and added the cartoon figures and the flower, the cigarette. Uh, Again, that's part of the process of just like what fits here. So
Yeah, these have a very sort of, I'm sure people have brought up surrealism, with that sort of floating, distorted cigarette and the floating rose. They feel like these loaded symbols almost, and then they have this very dreamlike quality
yeah,
and pretty cartoony, I'd say. Whereas that more recent piece that was in the Great Expectations show with the Caravaggio, it's interesting to see those side by side and think about, as your work is changing and evolving. That one felt, it definitely has the distortion, but it's a little more layered. I'm curious to see where this new body work goes. So right now you said you have an underdrawing on a canvas,
yeah.
um, but that you drew, you're not using the computer as much in this current.
No, not yet, and I'm not sure where this is going to go yet. It's just that that detail of the tiger attack, and um, one of the exciting parts of the process for me is not knowing myself, like what's going to be that. Like once the that aspect of the painting is finished, it feels like sort of setting a stage. So I can go back and look at it and see what I'm feeling and what other images might sort of create some more interesting things happening on the surface.
Do you ever take a painting and sort of input that into the computer and play around with elements and then go back to, the painting itself, or is it really kind of the start of your process that you're doing the sort of collage elements and shifting, and then you sort of stay on the canvas, or is it all?
Um, I'll try and work on two canvases at once, and um, usually like create that initial image, which, like I said, like sort of sets the stage, and maybe sit with it for a bit. For some reason, that tiger attack, I want it to be purple. Purple. I don't know why, but I think it's going to be purple. And then from there, kind of go with different elements that sort of create some sort of like either tension or ambiguity, or just like fit in some way.
Interesting that you mentioned the color, because color is so important in your work. It seems like it's so dominant. It's such a strong feature of your work. You have really saturated colors, or you had the other painting you had in the GOCA exhibition. You talked about you painted a house that was on fire, and you made the flames pink. And we talked about how that shifted the feeling of it from um, this sort of destructive, scary image almost to almost cartoony, just by shifting the color.
Right.
So it's really interesting to hear you talking about articulating that it needs to be purple, because I can tell in that's part of your intuitive process. You feel the color and you're like, this is where I'm going to go, and that helps you sort of like go down that roadmap that you're creating as you create the painting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Color is really, really important to me. I just love color. There's no other reason. I love color so much that it needs to be in my work, and it needs to be um, hypersaturated and just bright.
And you're working with oils, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm. So how are you able to get the supplies you need right now?
I'm pretty well sucked up on paints, brushes, everything. So yeah, I think I've got maybe like a good 4 months of paint ready to go. So
Well, purple is a pretty intense color. Have you ever read? There's a great book on color. I'll send you a link. I'm spacing on the name
sure.
of it. But it's basically about each color of the palette and its anthropological history.
Interesting.
Uh, and
Is that the natural history of colors, or is
yeah,
it? Yeah, I've not read that yet. I'd love to check that out.
yeah, it's so fascinating to think about the economics of a color like purple, and what did it mean, especially since you reference classical, painting repertoire, and what did that pigment and that color mean economically? What did it mean for the paintings that it was used in? It's pretty fascinating.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's interesting. I have uh, my color swatches from Home Depot here, which I
Oh,
sometimes just like to spread these out and look at them. But
yeah.
yeah, I like to use these as references to sort of like lay down some colors and sort of see how they interact and everything. Color. God. Ugh.
That's interesting. Another artist that I showed last year, Andrew Huffman, he does hard edge abstraction. They're
Mhm.
different painting, but he talked about his paintings like jazz. And I asked him to elaborate on that. And he talked about, well, if you put one color down next to another color, um, it's can be very experimental. You sort of don't quite understand the relationship until you see them together. And he's, I think, swatches and layering like that as well. And it's almost like jazz has a intuitive, organic quality to it when it's being created. And so he talks about his paintings being created in that way, where they look extremely planned out. He's definitely taping things out, and on the drawing and the structure is, but then when it gets to the color phase, that's where he lets things sort of just be very loose, and he responds intuitively to the colors as they relate to each other. So it sounds like you have a similar openness.
Absolutely. Yeah. And with this show, I've thought of maybe like starting with color as one of the like the primary sort of focuses. So like the purple tiger attack scene. I'm thinking about a lot of like sort of burnt yellows, things like that. Just so like sort of like that purple and the yellow combined just creates this like really interesting energy. So
Wow. Those are complementary colors, right? So they're
yeah,
gonna.
they're gonna pop. Yeah, love to see it pop.
Oh, I'm excited to see where it goes. When is that exhibition? In September right now?
It's planned for September. We talked a little bit before this discussion about how every day, every week feels a little bit different and strange. So I'm going forward sort of like I have a show in September. So we'll see what happens.
Probably the best way to handle it,
Yeah,
how, and then once you get there, you can figure out, maybe you'll have a body of work that you can hold on to and show 2 months later. Who knows what's happening,
exactly.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The point right now for me is just to start working again. The last month and a half, 2 months have been really distracting, and I haven't really been able to focus. I've talked to a handful of other artists that are kind of in the same situation. You know, like we were all in survival mode for about a month and a half, and I think things are kind of like I feel like not that they feel normal, but like we've all maybe adjusted to it. So now for me, it feels okay to start being, I guess, productive.
Well, let's do well with that. I think, yeah, everybody can relate to the challenge of focus. And it can be it can be really a gift to have a big project, but it can also probably feel sort of, if you, I don't know, if you can't get that focus, it can feel challenging. I've been really challenged by that in recent weeks, and I'm producing these studio visits and trying to really keep it together. And some of these, I feel like I'm going to look back and say, "Wow, you were really falling apart there."
Well, I've as
Just
an outsider, the discussions that you've had with other artists have been really great. I've really enjoyed watching them. So thank you.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I feel like I was talking about it with my partner Don, and saying, this is really enjoyable for me, and it also puts a structure. I'm trying to put a pace of doing 2 of these a week, and really focusing outward on, okay, how can I support the artists in our community? What would be helpful? And to that end, I've asked every artist, what there are some relief efforts going on for artists. Obviously, bringing some financial support is always important. But is there anything else that we can share out as we share this out, that you think could benefit artists right now and going forward, as we're certainly still going to continue to have some tough times ahead?
Um, as far as like financially goes, like I said, I have my full time job. Um, I feel really lucky to have that, and this is how I've always worked. Just like working my shift, and on the weekend maybe I'll have some time to paint. So I haven't really reached out for any sort of like financial assistance or grants, etc. Um, I know that there are a lot of people that are struggling right now who, overnight lost their jobs in the service industry or whatever, and that's a lot of artists. So I know that there are a lot of grants out there, other assistance, but I wouldn't really be the one to ask because I just work my job and support my art career through that.
Yeah, I guess what I'm also wondering is, can you think of, are there any other ways that people can, be supported? Obviously come to your show in September. Like, what does that mean to show up for each other, to go to the show? Obviously, we're going to have a little bit of a different understanding of that after being all shut down like this.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, if you have any um, disposable income, I think supporting artists buying their work is a really great way to use that to help the arts community. We have a lot of local artists that are putting some of their work out there on Instagram or other platforms, and you can always support an artist by just buying a print, buying a piece. If you have that ability, you can use your Trump stimulus check to maybe support some local artists.
Good advice. I think that made me think about sharing out. We are sharing websites, Instagram, I don't think a lot of people know how many artists sell work off of Instagram.
Mhm.
I think a lot of artists are putting maybe smaller works, or maybe some artists are even focusing on making smaller works right now, or in this period that you were talking about, where it's hard to focus because they could almost kind of knock it out in a day, and it felt like achievable, and
Right.
at times everything felt really overwhelming. But I was just thinking, look back and pull all the artists from this series, and we can do a post letting people know, like, hey, a really great way to support artists is to buy their work. And here are some of the artists that we've featured, and check out their Instagram, and you can contact them directly. And you can even ship a lot of the work, I'm sure, or have somebody come by and pick it up from in front of your house, curbside pickup of art.
I love that.
Not. Um, but I talked a lot about collecting and how mm, I'm starting a series next week with some of our supporters and asking them to share a work of art in their home that's meaningful to them. We're going to do a small Zoom gathering, and we're
Cool.
just going to talk about art that they're living with, because you really, you develop this really special relationship with art when you collect it. And it's a level of respect for the artist that obviously the financial is very important, but it's just really supportive of your whole practice, right? It's saying like, hey, I really appreciate what you're doing. I so much that I'm going to bring this into my personal space and live with your work. And it's a special feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's a, just to be in someone's house, like have your work that you spent like, this time on, this energy. It's a really good feeling to have that like sort of intimate relationship in someone's home that they can. I have a small art collection, and I pass it. I walk into my living room. It's there. You kind of forget it, but every now and then I'll just like kind of take a pause and look at the pieces that I have, and it's really special.
Yeah. Well, I think I'll go ahead and we'll work on sharing that out and encourage people to reach out. And because sometimes there's a piece of art you could buy for $50 even, it doesn't have to always be in the thousands or something like that.
So,
Um, but there's a whole range is my point. Um, well, good luck. Um,
hey,
you
thanks.
know, I read a great book recently on habit, and it was talking about how instead of beating ourselves up that, oh, we only produce with an external deadline, to really understand your personal way you're motivated. And it sounds like you really have a good knowledge of yourself, and you use the structure of the exhibition to help push the work into a new direction, and take some chances with it. And then obviously it allows that platform where you can share it out. So we look forward to I look forward to seeing it in person, and all of us gathering in person soon.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks, Simon. Really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Daisy. Appreciate you.